I think that really goes to what Kim will start to talk about, which is actually how we use the spectrum to really get at what exactly are we wanting to achieve out of the engagement process that we're going to undertake. And Kim will take you through that. I presume most people are familiar with this. It's a tool that's been around now since the early 80s, the late 70s, and promulgated by IAP2, and there are some variations of that around which might be a bit more suitable to the Australian context as well. But Kim will take you through that because it is a really useful starting point before you embark on any engagement process to work through with your client and potentially with the stakeholders to understand exactly how you might go best around devising that process. Kim.
Okay, thanks. So, you know, we saw there, as Brendan said, what can go wrong, and I think one of the most common mistakes when engagement is being planned and techniques are being chosen is that it's not planned. So that the you know, real common mistake is organisations dive in and just choose engagement techniques, or as Catherine referred to there, agree to attend something without actually necessarily sitting back and thinking, okay, how does this all work? So speaking to a bunch of people who are used to communications, first key message today is you don't dive in straight away into the choosing of the techniques, you engage your brain. So if you want a good engagement plan, key message, you've got to engage your brain. So what we're actually talking about today is the thinking process, and Brendan has said that a couple of times, the thinking process behind getting engagement right. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what we're talking about, you'll be learning a process that'll help structure your thinking. And as Brendan said before, for those who are familiar with it, we're going to be, it's probably integrated, and we're going to ask you to unpack it. And unpacking it actually helps you, if it's a bit flabby, helps you, as we've been saying, helps you strengthen it up. And it also, if you unpack it, it makes it easier for you to explain it to your client and colleagues and other people. So who in the room is familiar with the IAP2 spectrum, International Association of Public Participation, International Spectrum? So it's not the only way of thinking about engagement, but it is the internationally recognised standard. And there are some other, you know, there's a number of criticisms of it, including within the company here, but it is a way of structuring thinking. Now, it was in the, it was in your background notes, so for those who've bought the workout notes, it's this page. We've got a couple of spare copies at the front if people want it, and I've got it on the board. I've got it on the board here, and we're just going to work through it, referring to the scenario. So it's got 5 levels. It's got 5 levels of participation: inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower. And as you move from the left to right in the spectrum, what's happening? As you move from inform to consult to involve to collaborate to empower, what's actually happening?
Engaging more.
Pardon?
Engaging more.
You're engaging more.
The community has more say.
The community's got more say. So it's not necessarily about just more stuff and, you know, more quantity, but it's about the community's actually got more influence.
You have
okay.
Less control.
Pardon?
Less control.
You've got less control if you're the organiser of the whole thing. Yeah. Anything else about the move from left to right? The spectrum itself has got a goal and a promise, all of which are on there. And under the goal and the promise, there's some example techniques. And the top bit of that is straight from the IAP2 spectrum. The bottom bit is we updated what the IAP2 says about the example techniques, and that's something that we'll continue to update. So as you go from left to right, I've just done some short key words from each of the levels. So inform, some key words, you're providing information, and we're assisting the community, if it's community or stakeholders who are being consulted, we're assisting them to understand. So providing information, assisting them to understand. Go to the next level, we're obtaining public feedback, and we're letting you know how your feedback was considered if you're the community or stakeholders. You go to the next level, we're working with you and your concerns are fully understood and reflected in options. Okay, so you're getting the sense about how there's more influence in the different levels and how they build on each other. So if you're consulting, you're also typically informing. You know what I mean? So they're building. You get to collaborate. We partner with you in options and preferred option identification. So that's a summary of keywords, the details in your warm-up notes. And we incorporate your advice, if you're the community and stakeholders, I'm the organiser, we incorporate your advice to the maximum extent possible. So, like, what's the main difference between collaborate and inform?
The word partner.
Yep.
The two-way communication.
Yep. Yep. Partner's a big word, isn't it? And the two-way stuff is a big word. By the time we get to empower, what's happening with empower? Some of you have worked with this. What's happening with empower? Rachel, you're smiling.
You don't
Jenny?
really make the decision.
Yeah.
Somebody else can influence or make a decision.
They make it. You decide and we implement. That's what the words
You're
say.
almost acting as the agent for what you're being told.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the goal here in this spectrum is to place final decision making in the hands of the public. So think about that in relation to government in particular. And we will implement what you decide. So quite big. So as you move from left to right, that's what you're getting. You're getting that the community's got more capacity to influence right up to the point where they decide. And what we would typically say is that in government, it's very hard to get there.
Well, don't you point out that it's not legally possible?
Yeah.
In some cases.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the. If you read your warm-up notes, that's what we've said is that it's not. And if you're talking about some contemporary models, there are some more contemporary models around, and they would typically be dropping out this end of the spectrum or saying something slightly different about it. Jenny?
There are examples, say, from a more community development perspective, though, where you can go towards empower and also from a grassroots perspective, and also a lot of some Aboriginal consultation projects and social impact projects have been empowered.
Yeah. So you can get towards that end with government. With government, it's hard. Yeah, Wendy?
I can't hear what the other people in the room are saying. I can hear you, but I can't hear what the other comments are. If you could just paraphrase afterwards.
Okay, we'll see how we go. So people have just been commenting, Wendy, on the different parts of the spectrum. So what I want you to start thinking about is the scenario now that went out. Okay, and I asked you to think about who the stakeholders in that scenario were. And what we're going to do is just start to populate this table with who the stakeholders are, and then whether we think we're actually involving or consulting or informing or collaborating.